Hey, what's going on, everyone? AMR back here again with another tier list. So in today's video, I think I'm going to be tackling making a tier list of the 2021 and 2022 quarterback list. So this is based off of the season that just wrapped up this past Sunday. For those of you that watched the Super Bowl, I'd love to hear what your thoughts were. I was rooting for the Bengals with the full-on expectation that the Rams are going to take it. Unfortunately, it did seem like there was some late game calls that went in the favor of the Rams, and those ended up being like the deciding factor in the game, which you just never really like to see that. But really good season by the Bengals, and the Rams definitely a team that deserved it as well. I don't know how Cooper Kupp didn't win the MVP for the season as a Triple Crown winner for the wide receiver position. But that's a story for another day. So let's go ahead and jump on in here. Tom Brady has to be S tier to me. I mean, this guy is 44, 45 years old, and he was top 2 in the MVP race as far as quarterbacks concerned, just taking a backseat to Aaron Rodgers. I think a lot of that has to just due to like political reasons. He did announce that he is retiring from football. So it'll be interesting to see what life has for Tom Brady after football. It could be one of those Brett Favre situations where he comes out of retirement again to, I don't know, maybe he just gets the jitters and he wants to come back for another like farewell season. It sounds like he definitely did not want to have a farewell tribute type season like Ben Roethlisberger did this season. So it will be interesting to see where he lands. If he does end up staying in retirement, good for him. He's had the best career in NFL history, and in my opinion, he is the best football player in NFL history. Accolades just are way too much on his side. Next up, we got Joe Burrow. I'm going to put Joe Burrow in A. The reason why I'm putting Joe Burrow in A is because he plays far too risky for a quarterback. His first year in the league, he tears his ACL. And then in the Super Bowl game, he also had a rather bizarre type of sack that happened where it looked like his knee got bent again. He just puts himself in far too many situations where he could get hurt. And I think that later on down the line, that's going to really dictate whether or not he can have a long NFL career or not. He needs to work on sliding to protect himself. Accuracy-wise, he's probably one of the more accurate quarterbacks. He's got a really, really good head on his shoulders. He does very good reads, and he's got a super talented receiving core. If he can improve upon just figuring out how to better protect his body, I think that he will be an S tier player in the years to come. But when you got 3-4 guys who are only going to be making the S tier, you really want to be as decisive as possible. And I just don't feel good enough putting a second year comeback player of the year into the S tier just quite yet. Dak Prescott, I'm going to put in C. So everyone kind of rags on Prescott as not being one of those like premier talent quarterbacks. I never really understood what that meant. The guy consistently throws for like over 300 yards a game. He did have a pretty nasty injury last season that tore up his ankle really bad. But all in all, I mean, I think Prescott's a very good quarterback until I saw him in the postseason. So a postseason quarterback is really where I think legends are made. And ultimately, it's how you work your way up this tier list. Prescott really kind of shit the bed in the postseason. He had a scramble play on, I don't know, I think it was like third down where he had to get to the first down marker and no one was open on the flats or the outside, so he decided to run up the middle with no timeouts. Ultimately, the game was decided on that play, time ran out, and the Cowboys lost. So I just think that when stuff hits the fan, in a situation like that, Prescott's got to be more aware of the fact that team doesn't have timeouts. It's probably unlikely that we'll be able to get to another playoff. And those are plays that Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning would have never done, ever. I think that when we enter this new era of what a quarterback is, where they're more scrambly, if that's a word, they run into these situations where they try to get the job done on the ground and not really take into account the smarts of the football. So with that, I'm going to put him at C. I think that up until what I saw in the playoffs, he was a B tier player. But given how lackluster he was able to utilize his receiving core outside of Dalton Schultz and Amari Cooper at times. He just has way too talented of an offense to just squander the playoff like that. It was a really, really poor showing, and so therefore I'm landing at C. Next up, we have Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm going to put him at D. I think that he's one of those players that he gets a lot of hype because he's a really, really fun guy to watch. Got like the Fitzmagic personality where he can come into like a 3-4 game stretch, bring the team on his shoulders, and do really, really well. But longevity-wise, he just cannot manage a football team throughout an entire 16-game season. I think that he has that hard-nosed football, which is great. However, he's like getting up there in age. So he's past his prime. He jumps around from team to team too much to build any type of a chemistry with a core. He's been a backup quarterback his entire career. The only reason that he got moved over to Washington this past season is because Washington was going through a bit of a rebuild year and he got hurt. So he only was able to play a couple of games this season. Did fairly well in those games, but he'll always be a backup right now, and that's unfortunate because I really like him as a person, but as a quarterback, I'd be pretty disappointed if my team drafted him. Or I'd be pretty disappointed if my team chose to make him our starting quarterback. Patrick Mahomes got to be S tier, so it's crazy to me that we as NFL fans were saying like, oh my god, Mahomes is having a really down year. If you look at it, like, he was still having a pretty good year. Yes, he had a higher amount of interceptions than he normally does, but if he had done this in his first year in the league, we would have been like in awe over this type of a guy. He took his team after starting 3-4 in the season to like, I think it was like a 12-1 stretch over the last half of the season. The guy is phenomenal. He makes such smart decisions with the football. He can get the job done with his legs. And he's one of those people, I mean, we saw with the Bills where they had 13 seconds and he still managed to get all the way down the field, tied the game, and then win it in overtime. The guy is a human highlight reel and will go down as one of the best quarterbacks of the past decade, for sure, if not forever. It's just too early to tell so far, but for now, definitely an S-tier quarterback. Tyrod Taylor, I'm going to put at the back end of C. Is a very similar playstyle to like Lamar Jackson, except he's not as fast, not as elusive. He's a better passer, in my opinion. He just gets riddled with injuries. I mean, he had the freak accident a couple years ago when he was in the Chargers where a doctor punctured his lung while giving him a shot of cortisone before a game started. And then this season, again, an injury that landed him on IR. Davis Mills came into the scene, who, in my opinion, is a better quarterback overall than Tyrod Taylor. He did phenomenal in the replacement role. And I think that the Texans are in a bit of a tight spot right now with deciding who they want to go with, whether it be Taylor or Mills in the future. In my opinion, you can get more value with Mills, given that he won't chew up as much as he won't be chewing up as much cap space as it would be to retain Taylor. Sam Darnold is terrible. I'm not going to spend too much time on Sam Darnold here. I think that the Panthers made a horrible decision this offseason to go and acquire Sam Darnold. He's just not a good quarterback. He just looks completely outmatched on the field. He does not have a ton of arm strength. He misses his wide open receivers way too often, and he's just not a good game manager. So all that being said, like, those are all qualities that you need in a good quarterback. Doesn't possess any of them, so got to be in D. It's really no surprise how their season turned out. Yeah, gonna go in D. Jared Goff, I'm gonna put above Tyrod Taylor but behind Dak Prescott. I think Jared Goff is a decent quarterback. I think that a lot of people give him a lot of crap and stuff, but the dude's got some pretty impressive arm talent. There's no denying that. There's been games where he's thrown for over 400 yards, and he led the Rams to a Super Bowl. A lot of that was probably attributed to Sean McVay's system and having a stellar defense along with like a really, really good receiving core. And then you throw him on a team like the Lions and he struggles to win a game. I think that giving giving him another 3-4 years in Detroit, they could actually be in contention to win the division in the NFC North. I think that the Amon-Ra St. Brown was a good diamond in the rough this year. They have a super talent at the running back position with DeAndre Swift. And then as Dan Campbell becomes more accustomed to what it takes to manage a game, a lot of those 50-50 games, like the one where Justin Tucker kicked the 66-yard field goal to win the game, a lot of those 50-50 games will start going in the favor of the Lions, get them closer and closer to a divisional conference championship. That in combination with the fact that, Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be gone from the Green Bay Packers, if not this year and the years to come. So I would say Jared Goff has the potential to be really, really good. He just tries to do too much at times, and he doesn't have quite enough talent to push the issue. Like, he's really, really good when he can stay in the pocket and throw to receivers, but as soon as he has to start moving around, he becomes inaccurate, throws a lot of picks. Aaron Rodgers is S tier. I'm going to put him in front of Patrick Mahomes, but behind Brady. So I think Aaron Rodgers is probably one of the best players in the NFL this year. I mean, he obviously won the MVP this year, but that dude is so deadly with the football. I am a Chicago Bears fan, and for me to put him this high just tells you how talented he is, given how much I hate Aaron Rodgers. Him saying, I still own you to Chicago fans was a hard pill to swallow. He's a super talent, and I think that he'll go down as one of the best quarterbacks of all time. He has this certain arc to his deep passes where he just drops it into the receiver. There was actually a sports science thing on this, that when he throws the ball on that moon trajectory is what they call it, the receiver has a higher probability to run, get underneath it, and have a easier point of contact to catch the football. I think that he just, for being a quarterback that's not known to kill you with his feet, yes, he did have quite a few rushing touchdowns and a couple of games where he got the 30-yard rushing category, but he's traditionally just I'm going to roll out to the right, I'm just going to burn you with my arm. And he is so good at reading and making the defense shift from one way to another just based off his eye movement. He is a very, very talented human being. I hate him, and I will never change that, but he's pretty damn good at football. Next up, we have Zach Wilson. I'm going to put Zach Wilson right behind Dak Prescott because he was a rookie this season. He showed a lot of promise, and I think next season he'll probably be here. He had times where really didn't have much to work with on the Jets. So for him to put together a season like he did, I think that shows a lot of optimism in terms of what they were being able to get from that draft. I think Sam Darnold is I think Zach Wilson is going to be a problem that his division is going to have to try and figure out how to minimize in the future. If you get him some good receivers, he's going to be pretty deadly. He's very talented on the ground as well. He had a couple of rushing touchdowns and a couple of breakaway runs. I'm very excited to see what the future holds. Next up, we got Sussy Russie. So I'm going to put Sussy Wilson at the back of A tier. I think that just based off of accolades alone, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He had a very bad season this past season, but that's not indicative of his overall talent as a quarterback. He had that finger issue, and a lot of the reads that he was making this year that kind of led him to have a bad season post-injury was he was relying on that arm talent that he had beforehand that maybe necessarily wasn't at full strength, and so some of those reads were getting off. DK Metcalf had a really hard time this year. He was drawing a lot of the number one cornerback coverages. So, Russell Wilson, I think, still has 4 or 5 really strong years ahead of him. I'm excited to see where he ends up, but yes, he did have a very, very bad season in terms of how Russell Wilson usually performs. That being said, it's an exciting player to watch, and I think overall he's very smart with the football, and I'm excited to see where he goes. Daniel Jones, I'm going to put him at the very top of D, almost at the end of C. You know, he had some pretty talented wide receivers. I was very disappointed with his underutilization of Kadarius Toney this year. Kadarius Toney is like one of those do-it-all type of talents, and he was vastly underutilized. Darius Slayton had a very poor season. The acquisition of Kenny Gallaudet was supposed to be like a big thing. Kenny Gallaudet had like 500 yards receiving on the year. Horrid. Sure, they had a bunch of injuries, and you didn't see it. Daniel Jones took quite a hit on a scramble, and it led him to do like these like deer in headlight Bambi walk afterwards. So he got concussed, ended his season a little short. But the Giants at that point in time were already kind of eliminated from playoffs. He's in his third year in the NFL, and his team's not getting any better. They got Saquon Barkley behind him. Barkley can't stay healthy. That's not really indicative of whether or not he's a good quarterback, but he's just not able to win games. He's not a game changer for your team. He's kind of like the Walmart version of Eli Manning. Kirk Cousins, I'm going to put him B. I think Kirk Cousins actually has the potential to be one of the better quarterbacks. He has a very, very high completion percentage. That being said, he's pretty bad outside of the pocket. If the pocket starts to collapse, he pretty much gets sacked every single time. He does not know how to evade pressure. He's got some super talent for the receiving core with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen's getting a little older, so we'll see what they do with him. But KJ Osborne is a very, very good second option in the absence of Thielen, as well as they have Chad Beebe, who tore his ACL in the preseason, or a couple games in the season, not really sure, but they lost that talent as well. And of course, you got Dalvin Cook behind him. I think with a team like that, you should have at least been a little closer to winning the division this past season, and they weren't. Sure, Zimmer got fired, so a lot of it could have been for coaching, but he was kind of lackluster in Washington when he was there prior. So I'm going to put him at B for now, but if I don't see an improvement in the next season, he's probably going to end up in a C tier. If there's any improvement, he'll probably stay at the top of B, if not in the back end of A, just because I think that he has a lot of talent when it comes to reading the field. I think that he has a lot of room to grow when it comes to pocket presence, though. Man, oh man, what to do? Yeah, I'm going to put Josh Allen in S tier. I know it's a little bold. I like to leave that S tier for truly S tier players. And looking at the remaining quarterbacks that I have on my list down here, I don't really see another quarterback in my eyes that is worthy of an S tier. So by default, I'm going to go to Josh Allen. I think that his showing in the playoffs this season just shed a lot of light on the heart and soul that he's bringing to the Buffalo and the, what is it called, Bill Mafia. Man, he is so talented at passing the football, and he is so deadly on the ground. When they were able to start getting Devin Singletary going on the ground, it made his threat with the football even more threatening, and his rollouts are just so unstoppable. I think that a Super Bowl is coming to Buffalo here in the next 2 years, and I think it's going to be a lot of the reason, and I think it's going to be largely attributed to Josh Allen. So I think there's going to be a lot of Kansas City Buffalo matchups in the future, but for the time being, it's going to have to take the backseat to Mahomes, not just because of what happened this playoffs, but because he's not quite on Mahomes' level yet. You know, he is very good with the football, but Mahomes is a little better at reading and being acrobatic than Josh Allen is so far. Justin Herbert, I'm going to put right behind Joe Burrow. So I think Joe Burrow is a little more deadly with the football given his receiving core. I'm not really sure what the future holds for Mike Williams in the Chargers system, along with Keenan Allen, who's getting a little older now. So there's just too many question marks about what's going to happen with the receiving core in the Chargers. I think that he has a quarterback that allows him to play his style of football, which is let it loose. You know, we're never going to punt the football. We're going to try and get every first down. So He's been able to put up some monster numbers. I would like to see him use his legs more. He had a couple of games this season where he like rushed for 90 yards and threw for over 300. Like, he has the potential to be a top tier A-list, if not an S-tier player, but there's just too many question marks right now. What's going to happen for the Chargers, and so therefore I'm going to leave him at the top of A. Ryan Tannehill, I'm going to put at the back end of B. He's got a really good, talented team. Mike Vrabel's system is kind of like a ground and pound system, so they don't really like. It wouldn't really matter what quarterback they had there. I think Vrabel's system is to utilize Derrick Henry as much as possible, and they have Julio Jones and AJ Brown. Even with those receivers, like Tannehill was still averaging like 212 yards passing. He used to be a receiver in college, so he's definitely got some decent athleticism. However, his arm talent isn't as spectacular as some of the other guys in the league. I think that he has enough of a presence rushing the football, like doing those rollouts to an end zone where he does a finger roll, that it causes defenses to kind of hold off on just blitzing. But that being said, I don't think that he's top 12 in the NFL. And I'm really trying to reserve the upper echelon of B, all of A, and all of S for the top 12 quarterback. Tua Tagovailoa, I'm going to put right behind Zach Wilson. I think Tua has the potential to be a strong quarterback in the NFL. That being said, for what he was doing at Bama, it's just not transitioning well to the NFL just yet. I don't know if it was because of Brian Flores' system not working or what have you, but with having Myles Gaskin in the backfield and Jalen Waddle and Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki, there's just too many strong pieces to have a season like they did. They had a very good defense, so I just think that if you put someone else behind center, like a Russell Wilson in Miami or even a Kirk Cousins, in my opinion, I think that Miami probably does a lot better. So Tua has a lot of room to grow. He makes some pretty poor decisions with the football so far. I'm very disappointed in that. And I think that he has the room to grow up to a B, but for now he's just going to stay in mid C. Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston, I don't think it really matters. They're both pretty bad. I think Taysom Hill is a gimmick of a quarterback situation they got going on. He's not threatening enough with the football through the air for teams to take him seriously. I don't know why teams don't cover his rushing attempts more. He's a very fast player. He was, again, one of those utility type players coming out of BYU, and he has the potential to be a very good, come in on the goal line opportunities, but he's not your end-all be-all quarterback. I think it's pretty obvious. Jameis Winston, he's always been terrible with the football. He had like one season where he had like over 30 interceptions. He's so bad. He tore his leg this year, so that really does suck. But with Sean Payton leaving the system, I think the only reason that the Saints were able to stay in a lot of those games was because Sean Payton has experience in those tight games, and I'm not optimistic for the future of New Orleans, and I think a lot of that has to do with the uncertainty at the quarterback position, along with just the zero talent in the receiving core. So Kyler Murray, I'm going to put at the very end of A. So I know that that's a very controversial spot for a Kyler Murray. He's a super talented player, and he's definitely shown at times that he can be the most elite quarterbacks in the league. However, in games where he did not have DeAndre Hopkins, he really struggled with the football, especially when teams shut down his getting outside on the ground. When he has to solely rely on him throwing the football, he typically loses those football games where teams are unable to stop him on the ground running. He has very, very good games. So when you're talking about a quarterback, I feel like if they shut down your scrambling ability and you lose a lot of games just with your arm, that tells you that you're probably not a good quarterback. So I'm going to put him at the end of A. However, that being said, I think that he has the potential to be top of A, if not S tier, in the future if he continues to work on his reads and his throwing abilities. I know a lot of it's going to be a troublesome task for him because he's so short, but he has the potential to be an S tier quarterback, especially with Rodgers and Brady growing older. That could leave some of these S tier opportunities open. With Derek Carr, I'm going to put him right between Cousins and Tannehill. I think that Derek Carr does not have like a ton of talent in the receiving core. I think that Bryan Edwards is kind of a bust so far in his career. You know, Henry Rugg situation, super unfortunate that he had made that decision to do that with his life/career. So he had to work with a lot of untalented receivers this past season. They got lucky in getting Deshaun Jackson, but outside of that, Darren Waller, he was hurt a lot this year, so he had to rely on Hunter Renfro. Hunter Renfro is one of the best route runners, if not the best route runner in the NFL. Super, super talented, but in games where Hunter Renfro got shut down, Derek Carr did not have very good games. I think that if you can get this guy some more talent on the outside, get that big, maybe like a Mike Williams-esque player, just super big guy that they have to try and guard, that opens up a lot of space for Waller and Renfro. They're really like that one player away from being a deep run playoff team. I mean, they made the playoffs this year. So the Vegas Raiders need to land on a head coach that fits the system. I think that Rich Bisaccia was a very, very good fit for the scheme, and I'm excited to see what they have to hold next season. Jalen Hertz, I'm going to put him way down here. I think that he's a terrible quarterback with the football. There are too many times that he misses wide open wide receivers. I think that he vastly underutilized Devontae Smith this season. Got lucky having Goddard have a fairly good season. And he's too reliant on his ability to scramble. I think that his talent does not outweigh some of the other guys on this list. If I had to have one of these on my team that I watch in the D category, I wouldn't even say Jalen Hurts is it. I would rather have a Daniel Jones over a Jalen Hurts. That's pretty sad. Jalen Hurts, if Jalen Hurts has a star running back behind him, he might be more effective. But again, his arm talent is pretty trash. So unless he figures out how to become more accurate with the football, I really don't think teams are going to be too scared to play against him. Baker Mayfield's really, really tough because he had a torn rotator cuff. It was a torn rotator cuff or torn labrum in his non-throwing shoulder, so it's kind of hard to decipher whether or not that had a lot of effect. I still think I'm going to put Baker Mayfield at the top of B. So even though he was hurt in his non-throwing shoulder, I don't think that having a injury to something that's not tied to your actual shoulder that throws the football has any effect on your reads as a quarterback. He made some pretty risky throws this year that almost always ended in interceptions. I think that he has the correct mentality when it comes to trying to bring a winning franchise to the city of Cleveland. I think he is their guy, and I'm very excited to watch him play the rest of his career. But that being said, I think that he needs to better assess his reads and figure out what they're going to do to get him more help, because Jarvis Landry was kind of ineffective this year. Their leading receiver was Donovan Peoples-Jones, who is very talented. I think that they underutilized Njoku this past season, and having Nick Chubb back there is just going to make teams want to play the run and force Baker Mayfield to throw the football more. So the team is really reliant on Baker Mayfield making the correct throws. I think that his arm talent is good enough to where if he starts making correct reads, they could be a really, really strong team. Jimmy G, I'm going to put at the back of B. I don't think that he has anything special in terms of like arm talent or anything. He's very, very good at reading a defense and figuring it out. He's not going to get the job done on the ground. I think after he tore his ACL or whatever it was a couple years ago, that really kind of struck the fear in him that he doesn't want to be a mobile quarterback. The offense in San Francisco is so deadly because they have that dual threat player of Deebo Samuel, which I think that Kyle Shanahan is definitely leveraging correctly in their offense. I think that the only reason Garoppolo is able to have so much success is because of the talent of Ayuk plus Samuel plus Kittle, as well as the dual threat on the ground of Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuel. And that was without the talent of Raheem Mostert, who got hurt this season, the very first game of the season. So I'm excited for the future, but in terms of end-all be-all talent, I think that they could do a lot of improving at the quarterback position. He's not a top 12 guy. Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, I'm going to put them behind Tyrod Taylor. It's kind of funny. So I think that Teddy Bridgewater and Tyrod Taylor have a lot of similarities. They both struggled to stay healthy. They both struggled to put a team on their back and be the game changer in some of those 50-50 games. I think that Drew Lock is, he plays like chicken with its head cut off. He gets really, really nervous when he gets under pressure. He tries to do too much, and I think that he just doesn't have overall talent to get out of a lot of the situations. I think Denver needs to make a change at quarterback, and I think that there's a lot of rumbles going on that it's either going to Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. I'm very excited if it's either one of those because they have an excellent receiving core. I just think that the quarterbacks there are just pretty bad. Matt Stafford, I'm going to put right behind Justin Herbert and in front of Russell Wilson. We've seen it for years and years and years that he's been able to play decent with bad receivers, but he finally had good receivers. They won a Super Bowl. I think that he has that ability to change a game with his arm. It's just unfortunate because he's like 10 years into his career now, whereas if this would have been like 4 or 5 years, we could have seen a different type of career path for him. He gets hurt a lot, but he plays through a lot of injuries. So I think rather than allowing his body to get healthy and then coming back in 2 or 3 weeks after and then lighting the league on fire, he's never really allowed himself to do that. That hard-nosed, tough type of style of football is very, very fun to watch. And as a fan of the team, I think that you really enjoy seeing a guy fight for your team. I just think that overall it hurts his ability to outplay some of his peers. So Stafford has the arm talent to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and now paired with Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods when he comes back, OBJ when he comes back, Van Jefferson, I think that they could be a very, very deadly team for another 3 years. So excited for the future. I think he's mid-A tier, and that's probably where he's going to stay. So I'm going to focus on Justin Fields as the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears because I don't think Andy Dalton has any type of future in Chicago. I'm going to put him right behind Tannehill. Now, hear me out on this one. I don't think Matt Nagy was very good at utilizing the talent that Justin Fields has to offer. In the few games that he kind of let Justin Fields play his style of football, he did fairly well. I think that Justin Fields, he had too much pressure on his shoulders to come in and be the guy. I think Allen Robinson was kind of checked out for him this season. I think that Darnell Mooney is a super talent at the position, so there's a lot of opportunity there for him to take the game over. And Justin Fields was projected to be a top 5 overall pick in his draft. He's got super talent. He's got a bunch of experience coming in from Ohio State. He knows what it takes to win and be a leader. I just think that with Nagy being forced out now, we may see a different Fields in the future, which I'm excited for. Lamar Jackson, I'm going to put in front of Kyler Murray. I think that if it's a race, because these two are very, very similar, I think if it's a race to who makes S tier, it's going to be Lamar Jackson over Kyler Murray. I think Lamar Jackson is more threatening on the ground than Kyler Murray is. He makes better decisions, plus he has an overall offensive scheme that fits that play style a little bit more. And his ability to hit receivers on a deep ball, he misses deep, which is exactly what you want in a quarterback. If they're going to throw the ball deep, they need to miss deep. And he's got some really, really good talent in Hollywood Brown out there. And he's got a superstar tight end of Mark Andrews, who actually led the team in receiving this past season. I think Lamar Jackson has the ability to be a top 5 quarterback. It's just about whether or not he can stay healthy and continue to protect the football. Big Ben, I'm going to put right here. I think that he kind of had like a noodle arm this past season. You know, he's... In my mind, Ben Roethlisberger has always looked like Will Ferrell out there with the football. He has like that tall, just awkward type body stature. He's very, very talented with the football. I think that he didn't really adjust his play style with how his arm was developing throughout his career. So I think that he was missing a lot of those open guys that he would have hit early on in his career that led them to Super Bowls. He's got a super talented running back, very talented receiving core. A little disappointed to see what they were able to do with that type of talent. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that Big Ben was just past his prime. So I'm very happy that he was able to have a farewell tribute type season, make the playoffs. And yeah, I think he'll go down as one of the better Pittsburgh Steelers quarterbacks of all time, but this past season was very lackluster for him. Matt Ryan, I'm going to put right next to him. I think Matt Ryan has showed that without having talented wide receivers, he's kind of an average quarterback. I mean, Julio Jones was gone. Calvin Ridley kind of is in this temporary retirement stage, and he hasn't been able to really do much with the football. I think that without a star receiving core, Matt Ryan is an average quarterback. He has thrown for quite a few picks. He fumbles the football all the time whenever he gets sacked. He's not a mobile quarterback, so he's relying solely on that arm to get the job done. And, you know, I don't see anything special when I watch Matt Ryan play football. Next up, we got Carson Wentz. I'm not really sure that this is Carson Wentz because it doesn't really look like him too much. I'm going to put Carson Wentz... I'm going to put Carson Wentz right in front of Daniel Jones. I think that Carson Wentz had, prior to his ACL injury, I think that he actually, like, right here, he kind of sucks at throwing the football, though. I mean, a big reason why they were able to do what they did when he came into the league as a rookie in Philadelphia was because he could get the job done on the ground. He was killing it through the air. And since then, I mean, he has really kind of fizzled out as a quarterback since that injury. I think that, I don't know if it's because of confidence or whatever, but there's even talks about them going in a different direction after just 1 year in Indianapolis. They really squandered their opportunity to make the playoffs on the back of what should have been in contention for a MVP season of Jonathan Taylor. If he wasn't able to make the playoffs with talent I really doubt that he has the talent to make the playoffs with any other team. I'm going to focus on Mack Jones as the quarterback here. I think that's kind of an insult to even have Cam Newton on this image. Mack Jones, I'm going to put at the back of A. He really impressed me. I went in with the expectation that the Patriots were going to suck again this year. I did not think too highly of Mack Jones. I didn't know if it fit the play style that Belichick wanted to roll with. He's played very, very well. He has a spectacular ability to read the field. He does not have that superstar wide receiver just yet, so for him to go in and dominate the division was really, really nice to see. I think the future's very, very bright for Mack Jones. I think that they need to cut out Cam Newton entirely out of the situation, scheme, everything. He's more of a cancer to the team than anything. And so for that reason, I'm putting him back at A for Mack Jones. Trevor Lawrence, I'm going to put right behind Baker Mayfield. So a lot of you are going like, well, what the heck? Like, why would you put him so high? They had a terrible season. He doesn't have much to work with here. I mean, his offensive line constantly had pressure on him. He did not have a super talent at the receiving core. DJ Chark got hurt. Marvin Jones, not really like anything special. He's a wide receiver 2, having to play as a wide receiver 1 this season. Laviska Shenault did not have a breakout season. James Robinson got hurt halfway through the season. Urban Meyer was a big flop as a head coach. I mean, the list goes on and on. The list goes on and on for Jaguars. So with all that being said, I think that you get him some talent on the outside and give him a defense. Like, they have a very good core with Josh Allen on their defense to build upon. But you get some games where they can hold the opponents to under 20 points, and I think that a lot of those games start flipping in the favor of the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, up until joining the NFL, had never lost a football game, I think, in his life. They were talking about how he didn't lose in high school, didn't lose in college, and he comes to the NFL and he almost loses all of them. It's kind of funny. I think that he is one of the super talents in the NFL. Future's very, very bright. I think there was a lot of pressure, a lot of eyes on him this season, and there's like hyper criticism. Give him 2 years and he'll be right here. You know, he is super, super good, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. So yeah, it looks like our S-tier quarterbacks are Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes, and Allen. I mean, did you really have any other question? Big surprises for me is having Baker Mayfield squeak into a top 12 quarterback. Didn't really see that. I didn't really predict that coming into this. And the D tier, you know, I wouldn't necessarily have thought that Daniel Jones would be a D tier, but given how everything kind of shook out, makes total sense. So that's going to do it for me. As always, if you like today's content, feel free to leave a like on the video and comment down below where you think I screwed up or where you totally agree on. But if you did like today's content, please consider subscribing. See you.